Hello, and welcome to Tools and Tips to Help Young Children Self-Regulate. We're going to go through some practical tools and techniques that will help children in an early years environment self-regulate. This will happen via co-regulation with an adult and then also intentional teachings that happen with adults so that they can gain that independence and being able to control their reactions to the sensations that they're experiencing. First and foremost, talking about the strategies for teaching is to teach children to calm down. What strategies do you use will be easiest for you to then teach. And then there are many resources available on the internet for coming up with different breathing techniques or meditations, but going just to the basics and deep breathing to the count of 10, to the count of 6, or sometimes it's actually easier, instead of counting from 1 to 10, which happens regularly, count from 75 to 85 or from 40 to 50. And this gets children using their brains, and so that they are better able to disconnect from the overwhelm that's happening in their bodies, and then it leads to a greater mind-body awareness when they're breathing intentionally and counting. As I mentioned before, the idea of being able to self-regulate and model that self-regulation so that you can then teach that self-regulation intentionally and passively. This becomes vital in an early years environment because adults can get overwhelmed just as much as children can. And our ability to keep calm in any situation makes the children feel safe and secure, and they know that there's no reason to panic. Then they will then go, oh, I can breathe through this. And then demonstrating that, even if you're going into a lesson, if you're going to sit down with a group of children and you want to get everybody to attention, sometimes it's nice to put your hand on your heart and say, oh, I can feel my heartbeat, and count your heartbeats or then breathe. And that really helps center the body. So self-regulation doesn't always happen in a time of emotional overwhelm. It can happen in a day-to-day experience where you just want to settle yourself. Having consistent, clear physical reminders is also very helpful to children when you are wanting to encourage children to keep their words in their mouth or to be quiet or to sit quietly. We often, out of habit, just put our finger to our lips. That is a message that it's time to be quiet. You can do that with self-calming techniques. One of the ones that I like to do when counting is to use my arms and do it this way. And then I just count as I'm doing my arms. And I will, as I'm counting up, I will do them up. And then as I'm counting down with a 10, 9, 8, 7, and so on, that also puts the mind and the body together, which is very helpful to children. And sometimes you don't even need to count. You can just start doing this. And the children recognize, oh, I can do that to help myself feel better. Or just putting your hands on your heart, and sometimes I just tap. And they see that this is a time to engage their bodies and their minds together. Also, when having these clear physical reminders, if you routinely sing the song Open Shut Them, you can just do that with your hands. And they will see that, oh, we're going to exercise our hand. The more consistently that you use these tools, the more likely the children are going to pick them up. And the more that you model them, it is also more likely that children are going to emulate you. Because as we know, children are looking to the adults to set the expectation, and they're looking to the adults to set what is happening in that moment. So if you are regulating yourself in that moment, they may then also regulate themselves. Having sensory tools available is also important, especially if you have a child who has sensory processing disorder, and knowing what tools works for them. A weighted blanket or a weighted shawl can be very helpful in having a child feel that sensation of grounding. Also, if you have a child that is more sensitive and you know that it is helpful for them to have their arms covered, having a sweater available so that they can slide that on will also help them be able to regulate themselves by using one of those tools. And then there's hand fidgets, and there's cushions that you can sit on that will help regulate the sensations in the body by giving a grounding point. Going on a sensory diet can also be very helpful. And this can be looked at two ways. It can be diet as a form of food and having those sensations in the mouth be pleasing and not triggering to a child, but also going on a diet, going on some restriction for the sensory input, turning off lights or making them lower can be going on a diet for the moment, and having the room clear of clutter, making it as open as possible so that visually there are things that can be seen easily. When there are a lot of things around, the eyes are jumping around from this to that, and it creates a difficult time to focus. So creating a sensory diet for yourself and being very intentional with what you take in is also an important tool when considering an overwhelming environment for children or even for yourself. Encouraging pretend play allows children to practice the techniques and tools that help self-regulation without being overwhelmed. It's easier to practice something when you're not having all the sensations in your body. So at a group time, at a gathering, talking about becoming very, very excited about something and what can we do to calm our bodies when we are excited, and going through your go-to techniques and bringing, and you can also use this as a time to introduce new ones and say, oh, when I am feeling very excited, someone shared with me this technique and I want to share it with you. And encourage the children to participate in that the older that they get. What do you do that helps you feel better? And that is a great way to open that discussion and normalize the discussion that everyone sometimes gets upset and many people need support, but we can also take care of it for ourselves. Plan for challenges. This is the number one tool, number one advice that I can give to anyone is plan for challenges. Expect the unexpected. Know what triggers individual children, know what triggers your group of children, and be available with a strategy to have it at the ready. If you are in a situation where something comes out of the blue, always having a single go-to can be very helpful with a backup plan. So plan for those challenging moments, expect the unexpected, and your days will go a lot smoother. And then children will actually have better coping strategies when the unexpected happens. You can then remind them, oh, when something surprising happens, this is what we do. This is how we can come back to our bodies. But then also preparing the children that something might be challenging can also be very helpful. If you know that someone is sometimes challenged by loud noises or loud music and you're going to a special music program, taking that child, just a moment with that child and saying, this might be very loud for you. If you would like, you can come and sit at the back next to me. You can start out with your friends, but know that if you are feeling challenged, you're always welcome to come to the back and sit next to me or sit next to someone else that the child finds comforting. Having positive sensory inputs available is also very helpful. Having Play-Doh consistently available, since that is a go-to for many people to feel uncomfortable. Having fidgets readily available so that they can use them, and providing that even when there isn't a sense of overwhelm, so that it becomes something that is readily available, that the children know that they can go to. And even if before the overwhelm happens, they may want to use the fidget. They may want to have their hands in the Play-Doh. And even if their central nervous system is just a little bit up, it'll bring it back down. So that hopefully throughout the day, you can have little ups and little downs, little ups and little downs throughout the day, because that is how we learn. There are things that are going to excite us, and there are going to have things that we're going to want to avoid. And have those little ups and downs and have those tools available throughout the day can keep a low level hum within the central nervous system. Understanding the concept of name it to tame it, that feelings happen, and being able to identify those feelings, where they're happening inside of the body, gives power to the child. I can feel my heartbeat. It is really pounding so hard. I am really excited. That was very startling, and it excited my heart, and my heart is pounding. Talking about that in a way that is easy and in touch with the body, the name it to tame it. It's much easier to control something that has a name that you understand. Oh, I see that this is uncomfortable for your arms. I see that this is itchy. Oh, yes, it does feel very slippery on your hands. And having children be able to have those words and have that language, then they can identify and say, I don't like this, or I do really like the sensation of having something slippery on my hands, or I enjoy when I'm feeling overwhelmed to have cold water on my hands. When I feel my heart pounding, I can take a deep breath, and that makes my heart not pound so hard. Name it to tame it is very helpful for children and adults, but especially for children who are just acquiring the language for what's happening inside their bodies. Emotional awareness skill building goes in line with that name it to tame it. This can happen in a quieter setting, in an intentional teaching moment, with perhaps having the emotion cards and talking about them. When reading a book, if there is a character in the book that's having an emotional response, then asking before reading the page, asking, oh, what does it look like this person is feeling? And doing that in a controlled environment is easier for the children to take in the information. When children are excited or overwhelmed, it's very difficult to take in additional information. So creating those intentional teaching moments that work on emotional skills is very helpful to young children, so that they have those tools at the ready when something goes amiss for them. Thank you very much for listening and going through these slides today. The more that we can become aware of the strategies that we use as adults, the easier it is to model those for the children in our care. And hopefully this leads to a more peaceful, calm classroom environment.